Hey everyone, I am recording this video on Transgender Awareness Week, which is a time for bringing attention to the trans community and the issues we face. At the end of the week this year on November 20th is the Transgender Day of Remembrance, which is about honoring trans people who were killed because of transphobia and drawing attention to anti-trans violence specifically. If you've been watching my videos for a while, you know that my channel is very much about education and visibility. I've discussed several times why these things are especially important to the trans community. And although I've been experimenting with my content lately, it's not going to change the core focus of my channel. Ideally, I would have been able to publish this video or a similar one on the week itself. However, because of the surgery that I'm still recovering from, I just didn't have time to prepare a video in addition to the gaming streams that I did this weekend. A big thank you to everyone who's donated towards the surgery, especially Finn Frostpaws, who literally donated the remaining amount of the bill during the stream itself. I do want to clarify that I am still recovering from the surgery. It is normal for the recovery time to be at least a month, and the procedure itself only has an 80% chance of success. If the surgery fails, I may need to get another one done, which is going to be extremely frustrating, because as we know, my extended insurance plan covered almost none of the cost. Therefore, I am holding off on discussing that medical issue in greater detail until I have a better idea of how things are going to play out. So aside from this video being an update about my personal life, I want to talk a bit about the issues that I've personally faced in the fandom myself, as well as what I've seen surrounding the American election. If you follow me on Twitter, you may have seen a tweet I did about Trans Awareness Week. I will read it off to you. As a furry trans person of color YouTuber, I have gotten pushback for my content. This year, we have seen our allies speak over us on trans issues. Please remember that allyship cannot supersede lived experience, so please seek trans info from trans people. The second and third points are closely related, and I'd like to go into greater detail at a later time. For this video, I would like to focus on the first point, the pushback that I've received. Let's break this down a bit. As a furry trans person of color YouTuber, I have received a lot of negative responses. And I don't mean the hate for just being furry or trans or a person of color. I've gotten hate for all of these things even before I started the channel, so it's not like, oh, anything is new here, it's just the internet. People take issue with the fact that I don't have a fursuit and I don't use a fursuit for my videos. That's not what this video is about either. What surprised me more was the pushback that I was getting for specific opinions. For example, people who are not happy with how vocal I am talking about trans topics. What actually surprised me was the pushback regarding my stances on ooh woo no politics mentality. This was not an idea that I just magically had someday, and I was like, wow, I'm going to create a very divisive video now. My opposition to this kind of mentality was built up over time, starting in the communities that I was a part of in the fandom. I actually started sharing my concerns about these policies about a month before I created the video. I was met with firm opposition, and I ended up distancing myself from these communities because of it. What I realized in October is that this wasn't just something in the communities that I was a part of. This was actually a trend in the fandom, a culture that existed even in the communities that I didn't know about. That's when I decided to make a video. And because of the previous rejection I received, I was bracing myself for a lot of backlash. Thankfully, among my viewers, the video was very well received. However, what I had not accounted for in my video was the American election. The election was not on my radar at the time, and I wasn't really considering it specifically when I was working on my video. This was the first time I was active in the fandom during an American election, and I was not prepared for the type of discourse that I saw online. In Canada, we have a multi-party system, so as a Canadian, I am not a very partisan person. Although I care very much about political issues, it's more about policy rather than it is about partisanship. The political discourse in the fandom surrounding the election was vicious. I saw a lot of people come out of the woodwork to talk about the election, about voting and the importance of it. And that's great, but these people had been pretty silent throughout all the other discourse this year, such as the Black Lives Matter movement and the backlash that racial minorities received because of it, let alone all the racism and transphobia that we already deal with in the fandom. These people also say that the fandom is very inclusive, but as we've seen this year, when allegations of transphobia or racism pop up, cisgender people and white people will speak over us on these topics. And these people haven't done very much politically aside from vote and tell people to vote, which is already something that minorities do not like to be told to do by people who are not minorities. Like, honestly, you shouldn't be telling minorities to vote if you're not also willing to acknowledge the problems that minorities have with the political climate right now. And now that Biden has won, everyone's patting themselves on the back. Biden winning the election is not going to heal the divisions in the United States as a country. Similarly, this extreme focus on the election and the systemic problems in America is costing us, the minorities here in the fandom. It is fueling divisions here in our community. And I don't just mean left-wing versus right-wing ideologies. I mean the pushback that minorities have been getting from people who are supposedly our allies. There's this trend I've been seeing leading up to the election, and it's become more apparent because of how focused people were on the election specifically. It's like for some left-wing furries, there's only one correct way to be left-wing, and if you're not that way, then you are against them, against the LGBT community, against racial minorities, and against the fandom as a whole. Prime example is how minorities should be able to talk openly in communities here. However, promoting positivity through silence and neutrality is deemed socially correct. So my desire to keep things vocal and open is conflated with right-wing ideology. It's like, to these people, my opinions are just so radical that I loop around the political spectrum and end up being an ultra-conservative somehow. And it's ironic because these policies are what allow right-wing people to exist in supposed left-wing spaces. Which leads into another example. There are people who are calling for all the right-wing furries in the fandom to somehow be expelled from the community. But these people aren't willing to talk about the problems that exist in the community, nor the policy and cultural changes needed to address them or bring about their goals. It's like they're just waiting for the Discord servers, for the convention boards, and for the large social media platforms to just decide to change on their own. I mean literally, they do not want to talk about it. I don't want to discuss this with you. These policies are not up to debate. Things need to be this way. If you have a problem with this, you are the problem. And then when we're not being conflated with fascists, then we're just pretending to be progressive for clout. Unlike the heroes of the fandom, we are just stirring up quote-unquote drama for quote-unquote social currency by proving that people are quote-unquote forever bad and are deserving of quote-unquote forever revenge. Tensions with minorities absolutely hit their boiling point this year. These types of attitudes are what drove me as a trans person of color to start my own YouTube channel. Things have only escalated leading up to the election and after the election as I've seen thus far. And since the election, I have never wanted so badly to just give into the divisions that people are trying to create. However, I don't want us to divide further. I fundamentally believe that we want to have more voices at the table rather than fewer. People are not perfect, and no minority group is a monolith. And being marginalized doesn't automatically make you a decent person. There are plenty of trans people who disagree with me and who I disagree with. But in my opinion, that doesn't make either of us less valid. I want us as a community to work together. And in order for that to happen, I think some people will have to change their attitudes. My takeaway from this video is that there is no time limit on politics. Trans issues do not start and end on Trans Awareness Week. Political issues do not start and end on the American election. What I've seen in the fandom has surprised me, but the outcomes have not. I would rather that as a community we band together and address specific problems that exist in the fandom. But if the leaders in the fandom do not want to do that, if they want to ignore us, focus on high-level ideas, and throw around buzzwords like it's some kind of game, minorities are just going to end up further alienated. And that's fine. It's been happening for a while. I don't expect it to change now. Just keep in mind that we reap what we sow. Anyways, thank you for watching. I hope you had a good Trans Awareness Week. And to all my American viewers, I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving. See you all next week. Bye.